Well, hey, welcome. We are having a conversation today about generosity.
Here we go.
I'm Pastor Chris, and I'm here with the Hot Toddy.
Oh boy, there you go again.
I said it. I couldn't
resist.
help myself. You are the man. So no, I've known Todd for a long time, and that was one that would just when we were youth pastors, and
you did it right away. So,
let's just be honest. As youth pastors, we say a lot of strange things.
We do.
Yeah,
this is true.
But it was good days. That's where I still remember the first. This has nothing to do with generosity other than I want to be generous towards you. The first message I ever remember you giving was about weeds.
Yep.
And you had a plant up there and you were talking about weeds and about being healthy. And I
remember because you came up afterwards like, hey, that was really good. And I was like, thanks.
Who are you?
Well, I was just trying to be like a bunch of whole new youth pastors. And I was like, well, I'll give this a try and see how it goes.
Let me be generous towards you,
It was very encouraging, Chris. So thank you.
And then here we are working together.
Generous. Yes, I know.
It's crazy. No, generosity is one of, I would say, probably one of my favorite things that I mean, today I got to bring tacos to some of the staff.
There you go.
Man.
They are good.
Thank you.
You make some good food, man.
I guess, generosity, it's a love language for me with food and with time. And there's a lot of ways you can be generous. So like,
but once again, it's a conversation that sometimes people go, oh, you guys, that's all you talk about is money.
Yeah.
But it's such a bigger conversation.
It is a bigger conversation. It's like, so this is going to lead somewhere. So give me a moment. So there used to be a place called in Sublimity called the Wooden Nickel. And it was just like this restaurant bar in Sublimity. And they had this hamburger that everybody talked about was so good. And so I went there going, all right, I can't wait to try this hamburger. And I was like, so overwhelmingly disappointed. It was so bad. And so I talked to one of my teens that was kind of a quiet kid. And he's like, yeah, it's like a cow on 100-acre pasture. Like, where's the beef? And I think so many times when you think about generosity, we think about, all we talk about is this. And it's just, you're missing something if you think it's generosity is just about money. You're looking at one cow on 100 acres rather than saying, okay, let's look at the field of generosity and find ways that we can engage this topic in a powerful way that can impact somebody's life or make a difference.
Yeah, because I think the funny part is if you don't like the conversation about generosity, then be like, well, but there's been so many people and even God who is generous towards you that you're just like, okay, great. I just go, generosity to me is just a conversation about how much you love God and how much you love others in a sense. It's not everything, but I also be like, it's how you show it.
Yeah.
It's how you put words into action.
Yep, absolutely.
You can't, I go, if you only said, I love you, but never did anything with it, they'd kind of be like, that's kind of a cheap love.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not something that I want to have a conversation about because, man, I don't ever want to be accused of like your words are just words. And
I don't think anybody wants it.
No.
But the hard part is generosity is hard.
It is.
It's sacrifice. It's things that sometimes it doesn't feel like you can control it as much as you would like.
Yeah.
You can.
Absolutely.
You can, but once you start going, well, I need to be generous, then you go, oh man, 10%'s not awesome. Time, I would rather be doing this than doing that. But on the other side of it, you go, but I also could live my life just to whatever I would want to do. I don't know if that's how you want to end either, to where it's like, I got to do everything I wanted to do. Selfishly, I got to do it all.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's nobody here to do it with.
True.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's like, for those who get frustrated by the generosity conversation within church, I go, or the money conversation within church, I go, I understand some churches or it's not been handled the best. Or
it's a little overdone.
Or whatever. But I'd also go, but it's an important conversation.
It is because it really is something that I believe if you allow it to can well up and be, because a lot of conversations I've had around well, if I had this, I could be generous.
If I had time, if I had money.
Yeah, then I could really do something. Oh no, hold on. And I tell this to my girls and I talked with them a lot, and it's not new. You've heard it. If you can't be generous with what you have, you'll never be generous with what's entrusted to you, right? In the future. Yep. Like find ways to be generous now. Like, yeah, I get it. It's tough, but you need to be generous with your time with those that you love most, like your spouse and your kids.
Yep.
Start there.
Yep.
Start with those people that are around you, because of my personality, it was easy sometimes for me to be generous for my job, for other people.
Yep.
And there were moments I had to look back and say, is me saying yes to being generous to them with my time, is it robbing some of the things I need to do with my family? And that was a tough conversation. Wow. Because generosity can work both ways. You can think you're being generous to do this for people because that's what God called you to do. That's your job. But God's like, okay, I love that you say yes, but I need you to make sure you're saying yes to those people that I've entrusted to you first and foremost, because I never want to leave them in the dust or behind for generosity's sake.
Yep.
And that's, oh man, that was a tough lesson to learn.
Right. Well, and this is like, it sounds like just like this whole series with anchors and how it's almost like, well, how's generosity an anchor in a sense? Like, sounds like something we should be doing. Like, how does it actually keep us from like falling away from God? That's a legitimate question. And I think one you should be asking, but I would go, I think generosity teaches us so much of just who God is. Yeah. And being like John 3:16, that God so loved the world that he gave his one and only son. So this is just, and not only just his one and only son, he gave us the world. He gave us the ability to breathe and live. He gave us so many things. Yeah. And if that wasn't enough, he goes, I'm also going to give you eternal life. Yeah. Well, and I love that because it's like this idea that he gave, there's this, I think it's Psalm 90:12. It's one of my favorite passages. Like, just help us to understand time, essentially. So that we can gain number our days, so that we can gain a heart of wisdom. Yep. And generosity is about wisdom. I think it really is understanding that God has given us. I heard it a long time ago, and you've heard it, and we've used it at church: time, talent, and treasure. Yep. Are you generous with your time, your talent, and your treasure? And I think, to me, that's a good barometer, like those areas with which God's given us all those. Yeah, I know, and he continues to give, and because he continues to give, out of us should well up something to want to reciprocate that to other people and to show them, one, the goodness of God, right? Like, as believers, we should be, one of the things we should be about is showing people the goodness of God. And man, allowing that to be evident with the way in which we spend our money, the way in which we give our time and our energy and the things that we really allow ourselves to be a part of. And it's so cool. But here's reality, though. Yeah. Like, when it comes to our church, like, I mean, the rule that we talk about as pastors, you may not know this, you may do, but like 20% of the people do 80% of the work. Yeah. And that could be true in business, but man, especially in church. Yeah. When it comes to volunteering and time, I would say, like, we see that giving. There's less than that, making sure that we're able to do what we're able to do. And so I would go to say that, like, oh no, we're, as a generation, we're just great at generosity. Yeah. No, I don't think so. No, I don't think you. I don't know if there's been any generation that's just like, hey, we nailed it. like just we can go back in the markers, like, hey, you nailed it there, you nailed it there. But no, there always is. There's always room for improvement, right? And there's always room to do it better ways. Now, that's not saying, and I was just thinking about this the other day. I am so grateful for the guys and the ladies that give time each week to serve, to watch kids, to be a part of greeting. Or, man, some of my parking volunteers walked into the church after the 9:30 service, and I was like, all right, give it up for the parking crew, you know. And I was just overwhelmingly thankful for them and for their willingness to stand out there. Yeah. I talked to a volunteer. He serves in the 2-year-old, and I was just like, hey, thank you. Yeah. Like, he does it on a consistent basis and shows up, and he's one of those is just, kids really enjoy kind of being around him, but he leads the classroom well. And I was just like, thank you for what you do. And he's like, I love it. Yeah. Like, I love being able to help kids and help families. And it's just a great time for me. And I'm just like, I think it's more fulfilling. Yeah. It helps you to stay in the right mindset. If you want to go, why is it an anchor? Is it because God's going, when you're generous, there is just something that begins to happen within your body and within your mind that you're going, this is good.
Yeah.
This is, I needed this in my life.
No, that is a good point. This idea, a sense of gratitude and really expressing, and you can do that in multiple ways. Like you just saying to him, hey, thank you. Maybe it's writing a note. I love writing notes, and I love just extending with words. You know, it's nice to have something tangible in your hands when it comes, but really emphasizing to people, because we've all known people, we've done stuff and we're like, man, I wish if somebody would just have said thank you. And that's not why we do it, right? We don't do something just to hear
or just
thank
for the
you.
good feeling.
Yeah, or the good feeling.
Yeah.
But I really want to appreciate and validate and affirm that person of, wow, I love that you were willing to give time. I thank you for being gracious and being generous with your time, because I know you have other things you can do. Or, you know, where have you seen it in a friendship where they just stopped what they're doing and said, well, you needed help.
Yep.
And you're like, I know, but I know what's going on at your house right now. And you're like, oh, thank you for being here. This makes all the difference in the world.
It means a lot to us when somebody steps into our lives and is generous. And I think God's on a whole nother level with that. And so I was like, if we could set the example of that. But I also understand it does raise some questions sometimes. It's like, because sometimes you might be like, man, I think about this more in a time frame. Or just time. Or I think about it with my talents, or treasure is actually easier for me. Like I get it. It's 10%. It's this kind of stuff. And so learning to expand those out across all three and moving from zero to something, something to scheduled to sacrifice. That's like, you're on this journey of learning what generosity is like. Because I do think it's easy to get stuck in it.
No, I would agree. I
keep doing the same things over and over.
I think that idea, like you talked about, like the nothing to something to scheduled to sacrifice. I think the hard part is, and I've been having a lot of conversations around this idea of like that final thought. Like I think people hear the word sacrifice, and sometimes they just get a little gun shy. They get a little scared, and they're like, "Yeah, this is really going to make me sacrifice." When in reality, it's just the idea of what you think it might do rather than what it actually will do. Because, you know, you and I have talked to so many people in the midst of ministry that once they do it, they're like, oh, that was a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've heard so many stories of people being willing to give and start tithing. And it's not like, hey, all this stuff just started to pile in, all these blessings. It was more like, you know, things just started to get taken care of. Things started to just be even, you know, lose here, and it just, you know, it's like, it was just crazy how God, and some of it's crazy stories. Like we actually got out of debt. We got out of just some healthiness, because learning to be good stewards of what God's given you and being generous in that sense. And I think that's what God wanted. When he gave us authority to run the earth, he's going, I've given you time. I've given you these resources, and I've given you talent to do it. Now go manage it well. And he goes, and I think all those, he goes, I don't want time to get in the way of our relationship.
Nope.
I don't want money, resources to get in the way of our relationship. And I don't want you to get so obsessed with your talent that it gets in the way of our relationship. So he put things around that goes, make sure you're being generous in those three.
Yeah. And it's so cool. Like, it's cool when all three of those things come together.
Oh, it's powerful.
Like, I can think of one guy that is a part of one of our teams, and he's just a good dude because he's so able to do. I'm jealous of him sometimes, like, because he thinks at a different level, and he's like, oh, I could take care of that. Let's do this and this and this. And the next thing you know, you're like, that looks really good. You are really good at that. And he's so generous with his willingness to stop, because let's be honest, sometimes we get busy doing things and we're like, I don't have time for that. But he makes time and just lives in such a different moment of being present that he allows God to use it. And because he does that, he is such a blessing to the people that get to see him at work and experience that. And it's really fun.
I think we spend, instead of thinking of it as like, hey, we're trying to hit some kind of milestone. Okay, I'm at 10%. I've done this. Now I'm done. It's like, I think God goes, no, you're on this generosity trajectory to where you keep increasing, to where you can go, where you learn to rely more and more on God. I rely more on God to teach me how much time I really do have
Yeah.
and all that I can give away.
Yep.
Like, and teach me, like, God, how much money I really need. Because there's a simplicity that comes into that conversation.
Oh man.
But also going like how much I can give away. I think I was going like, I don't think it's like, hey, 10%, great, you're done.
Yeah.
I won't ever talk to you again. I think it's beyond that. I think it keeps growing and gets healthier. And then talent, same deal. It's like, hey, learning to use your talent in a way. I mean, I loved one of the comedians that he went into prison. He's been in a lot of different things, but he would take his talent and go, I'm going to go share this. And in the midst of that, share his just walk with Christ.
Sure.
And because he goes, it's kind of like, if I can help people laugh,
yep,
and bring them joy in their lives.
Yeah.
I was just like, man, and Michael Jr. was it. And so I just loved using his talent and being so generous towards people who you go to prisons, and I'm just like, oh, what a cool ministry.
I think what did he say? He's like, if I could make them forget that they're in there for just a moment because of laughter.
I was like, wait, that's a generous talent thing and you could find him finding some purpose in that.
And
too.
he does. And he talks a lot about purpose.
And so
I was going to ask you this, and I can share mine first, just so you have time to think, like, what is there a story that set you on track to understand generosity in a really cool way? For me, it was a story my mom and dad always told, and other people have a story like this, right? Like, but I remember they lived in Oskaloosa, Iowa, and they were at a meeting one night, and somebody was like, a missionary was sharing, and they're like, hey, and God was speaking to him and say, you need to give your $10. And they're like, that's God, that's our grocery money for the week. Yeah. I think you are clearly mistaken. And mom and dad having that conversation back and forth and feeling compelled that they were supposed to give 10, and going back home and the next day finding an envelope with $10 in it, and saying, God just impressed upon me that you needed this.
Yeah.
And that was a story for me that helped set into motion this idea that, one, like you were talking about, God knows what we need. God can use us, and God can use other people. Yeah. That this idea of this relationship and how God works is so bigger than we give him credit for.
I'm trying to think. I know growing up, my mom and dad, when I think of like giving, I think of, I remember like my parents just said, like, when you get this money, put this money in the little church that I had. Like, it was this little white church, and I'd be like, all right. And then doing that. But I think as I got older, some of it, I'll be honest, was out of fear.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I was just like, God, I don't want money to get in the way. Like, I just had that, like, I never want money to get in the way of relationships. Sure, so I just, time was probably a tougher one for me, being generous, because I just had my rhythms and I like to do what I want to do. So learning to be generous more with some of that, I love. But I think for me, like, serving was an aspect of like being able to serve and do a simple thing, like do PowerPoint for the band.
Okay.
And so that people had the words and feel like I was a part of something.
Like, I'm with the band.
Yeah, I'm with the band, guys. But that was a beginning part to me of like, this is my way of helping other and being able to serve God in that. Yeah. And I think that began to translate into money. And I think one of the big things, especially money, is like, this was never my money to begin with. Like, God gave me the talents to do the things that I do to be able to make money. So if it's mine, then I better be willing. That's just a dangerous thought. Yeah. In a sense.
Well, it goes to that reality of what we talk about as a church, right? Just being irrationally generous. Right. And talking about out of Luke 15, where that money that went to that young man that he went and spent it came from his dad, and his dad had the money, and he willingly gave it, and the son just blew it. And you're thinking, well, it's over. I've wasted it all. And he coming back, it wasn't the money. When he came back and the Father opened his arms, which is a great representation of God waiting for us, longing for us to come home. It was never a conversation about the money that was lost. It was about the love, which God gives us, a generous love, opening his arms and restoring us in right relationship.
Yeah, and I think there's a tough question to ask yourself. If I'm not willing to be generous, then what does that say about my relationship with God? Yeah. and my relationship with others.
Yeah.
But I'll ask you this, because I do think this is where we start to turn away from generosity, is when we get hurt by it.
Yeah.
We feel like we serve, but then people just take advantage of it.
Yeah.
We give to a church spends it poorly, or it's being embezzled, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Those kind of things. And so because we all have our wounds from that.
Yep. Absolutely.
I mean, even for you, like, how have you navigated? Like, no, I still choose to be generous, or maybe even you're like, it took me some time to get there, but because I think we stop when we get hurt by others.
Yeah.
We stop giving them time.
Yeah.
We stop being generous in that. When we get hurt by people feel like you took advantage of us with money, stop giving.
Yeah.
Talents, if we feel like people are just rejecting them or not doing anything, we'll just stop. Like, we'll just stop because of pain that we felt, or hurt that we felt in our lives.
It really is something I think you alluded to earlier, just this idea of perspective. It's not mine. I mean, and God's like, listen, everybody gets hurt. Everybody gets frustrated. Everybody feels like they get the short end of it. It's not yours to hold on to, yours to hoard. You know, healthy things grow, right? Like, so when we focus on that unhealthiness, when we focus on that hurt, and we try to hoard and we stop, things start to, in lack of better terms, things start to stink a little bit, right? Because like, God, what are you doing with that? I'm holding on to it. I got hurt. Why? It's not yours. And that really, to me, that's a convicting thing. Rachel, if she was here, she'd be like, yeah, you do that with food a lot. Like, you just give away our food. Well, it's just sitting there, you know, it's okay. Somebody may want it, you know, know, and like making tacos today. She'd be like, well, what if I didn't? So purposely, I looked on the menu for the week and said, oh, we don't need shells this week. I can make tacos for staff. All right, let's go. That literally is the process that I've had to walk through a couple of times. Like, I've given you these things. I know you got hurt. You're going to be okay. Yep. I need you to trust me. I need you to trust that what I have planned for that, what I have planned for you, how I'm going to use you is far greater than the hurt that you're experiencing now. And if you realize that it's not about you, it's not about you, then you're going to be okay.
I think the conversation that I've had to navigate is control is a tricky thing.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah.
You know, like it tricks us in thinking it's better.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I got hurt, so I'm going to now control this. Or I'm going to control my money now that I've been taking it. Like, and in the end, control doesn't make us feel any better.
No.
It gives us a false sense of peace, maybe. Like, okay, I've got control over it.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be able to steer this in the right direction, or, you know, whatever. And I've just found, like, at the end, you're just like, well, I don't love this either.
Yeah. Well, in control, and you probably use that analogy, right?
Well,
like,
your
control
hands look like this.
Your grip rather than an open
like
hand. And obviously you can't drive like that, but you know, but we try to drive that ship. And I think anytime we think that we're the one in control, we can quickly and sometimes abruptly get reminded that we are not in control.
And that's why it's tricky, because it feels good sometimes to be able to go like, no, I'm controlling
I'm going to bless you. And it's like Oprah, like, I'm going to bless you. Everybody gets a car, you know, like,
and you even want to control the generosity. Like, I want it to be meaningful. I want it to be this. I want it to be. And so sometimes I'd be like, no, this is about me being generous and I should not have control over this.
Yeah.
Because how much generosity am I really offering if I'm controlling it and manipulating it? It doesn't work that way. And so that's the part that's, I know hurt happens and it causes us to do it. But if you're going to go down the control route, because that's usually what we pick in the midst of hurt, want to grab onto something that makes us feel okay, secure. I've just found that actually leads to more problems in the end.
Yeah.
Because you're white knuckling it.
Yeah.
The whole time.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, as much as this sucks, I'm going to be vulnerable.
Yeah. And I'm going to go.
I'm going to maybe give this person more time, or I'm going to still keep giving to this church, although I'm a little frustrated with this. Or I keep making this decision because part of this is not mine. Yeah. This is God's. But also, I don't want to live a life full of control. Yep. It sounds weird to say that, but I want, because I don't have any.
Yeah.
I never did. Like, you coming into this world, you're a baby. You got no control. None.
Yeah. You're totally relying on
when you get older,
else.
you have no control over when it's going to end.
And somewhere in the middle, we try to grab on to control
in the
so
middle.
hard. Yeah.
And I think God's going, no. Remember, you were generous to be born back then.
Yep.
And then your time of death, it's, to me, there's a generosity in going, that doesn't have to be the end, and God made that possible.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And so there's just, to me, God's going, he's trying to coach this over and over again, because he goes, he knows what the opposite of that. It's greed, it's control, it's stuff that we go, none of us want it, but it is tempting.
Yeah, it is. It is.
When we get hurt.
But man, the flip side of that, and I think that's the beauty of that conversation. What step are you willing to take in becoming a more generous person? What step or conversation do you need to have maybe this week to say, okay, I need to be more generous in this? It talks about it, and as we wrap up our time, just if you know how to give good gifts, how much more does your Heavenly Father want to bless you?
Yes.
And if he sees us walking that out, how much more is he pleased with our willingness and desire to be more like him?
Yeah.
And so
I would say maybe some steps out of this could be like, look at your generosity and go, okay, time. Would I say it's something? It's zero something scheduled or like, where am I in that? And even if it's maybe at the top level, like, okay, God, is there more that I can give?
Well,
because I think it's always a stretching time. Same thing with money. It'd be like, if it's something, could you move to schedule?
Yeah.
If it's scheduled, because I think you can move. One of the moves is like, well, I just do it, when I'm at church.
Yep.
Well, what if you did it to where it was pulling out of your bank account and came right out of your paycheck to where God gets first of your money. God gets first of your time. Even maybe going, you know what? I need to start the day with the Lord. And even the talents he's given you, like business, job, whatever you get to do, like, okay, am I using this to honor the Lord and give to him?
Well, and I think that's the coolest part about generosity, specifically in talents. Where are areas where your talent could be more utilized or hasn't even been a part of the way in which you honor God?
Right.
Like some of you have amazing talents that could propel into new areas of ministry or new areas of blessing people, of reaching people. And I would encourage you to explore that.
And some of it could be as simple as like, you know what? It's a tough season at work. I'm going to be the encourager this week. Just make it a goal to encourage one of my coworkers or encourage my family, whatever it may be. Like that could be a step towards some of that. Is just talents can also be as simple as encouraging somebody.
Well, and that's what I was going to close with. I'm like, I heard at one time, like, what would it look like for you to sometime this week, maybe even today, just take a moment to write a note to say thank you to someone that was generous towards you or somebody that did something for you. And maybe that becomes a habit of just writing a note of generosity, of thanks, saying, I appreciate what you do in my life and how you impact it or the time you give.
Yeah.
So,
and I would say there's another good book like Toxic Charity. I do think there's a good thought process of but sometimes the beginning spot is like learning to be generous and then learning to navigate. Okay. Is what I'm giving helpful, working and helpful? Yeah. And so there is that kind of conversation that I think would be at least worth diving into. So
cool. Well, I know we could spend a lot more time on this, but I think this has been good. You've had some really good stuff, man. And
you too, killing it.
Thanks. Appreciate you.
We hope you guys enjoy it.
Yeah.
We may think it's great, but it's just two people talking.
To a microphone. No. Hey, we really hope that you would take maybe a step and whether it's one of the things that we talked about, or again, if you have questions or want to have a conversation, don't hesitate to let us know, but we love spending time with you.
Yeah. And take those steps. I think there's a huge way of you growing in your generosity.
All right. Be generous. We'll talk to you soon.
See ya.